Imagine, like, studying for 6 straight months. You walk into your AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, sit down at the terminal, and you suddenly realize that 20% of the services you meticulously memorized, they don't even exist anymore.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario right there.
Right. Or, even worse, discovering that half the questions are about, AI tools and pricing models you've literally never even heard of.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that is the harsh reality for anyone taking the CLFCO2 in this 2025 to 2026 testing window.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this right now and you're currently using a study guide printed before late 2024, just put it down. I mean it. You are actively harming your chances of passing.
You really are. It's a completely different ballgame now.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to break down the exact blueprint of this newly updated AWS exam. We want to give you basically the ultimate shortcut to being well informed without having to, read through hundreds of pages of dry AWS white papers.
Because nobody wants to do that.
Nobody. We are looking at a highly specific set of notes regarding this exact exam window, and preparing for it requires a really hyper-focused strategy targeting 3 distinct areas of change.
Right, which are the expanded cloud economics, the massive influx of new AI services, and the aggressive clearing out of retired services.
Okay, let's unpack this because we want to ensure you don't just blindly memorize flashcards, but actually understand the logic behind what AWS is testing you on right now.
Yeah, context is everything here.
So before we get into the exact service names, we need to talk about the 2025 to 2026 landscape as a whole. Because AWS isn't just tweaking a few questions here, they fundamentally shifted the weighting of the exam domains.
They really have. What's fascinating here is that AWS has fundamentally changed their philosophy on what a cloud practitioner actually is.
How so?
Well, in the past, this foundational exam basically just tested your ability to identify basic building blocks, like do you know what a virtual server is?
Right. Or do you know what an S3 bucket is? Yeah, exactly. But the 2025-2026 updates represent a major evolutionary step. AWS realizes that the cloud isn't just about provisioning infrastructure anymore. I mean, it is about driving very specific business outcomes.
Okay, so less about the wires and more about the wallet.
Basically, yeah. So instead of just testing your technical recall of, storage tiers, they are testing your adaptability. They really want to know if you understand how these modern, highly abstracted services actually impact the bottom line of a business.
I mean, I get that the cloud is maturing, but if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a learner, that feels incredibly daunting.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot.
You spend hours memorizing how VPCs and subnets work, and then suddenly AWS they move the goalposts, and they expect you to understand complex business outcomes.
It's like trying to draw a map of a city that's currently under construction.
Yes. By the time you memorize a street, they built a new highway right over it. It almost feels like they're making a foundational exam unnecessarily difficult. Like, how does a learner avoid feeling completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of these updates? That is a very valid frustration. But, the secret to avoiding that overwhelm is looking at the underlying mechanism of why AWS is updating the scope.
So what's the why?
Well, you don't need to learn every single new service AWS launched at their last reInvent conference. Based on the source notes for the exam, we know we only need to focus our energy on categorizing these updates into 3 specific buckets.
Right, the 3 areas we mentioned.
Yeah, if you understand the themes of those buckets, the individual changes make logical sense. You start to see exactly where AWS is going.
Which leads us perfectly into the first and perhaps most heavily weighted major pillar of the exam updates, the evolving economics of the cloud.
Yes, because the most foundational rule of cloud computing today isn't actually about the technology itself.
It's fundamentally about how you pay for that technology. AWS has completely revamped how they test your knowledge of their pricing models, right?
Exactly. You really cannot claim to understand the foundation of AWS today without understanding FinOps, cloud financial management. The exam places a massive, undeniable emphasis on billing and cost optimization.
Oh, yeah, the notes make that very clear.
And this is where the exam gets highly specific. We aren't just talking about the basic pay-as-you-go concept anymore. The CLFCO2 now heavily tests your ability to differentiate between nuanced purchasing options.
Okay, give me an example.
For example, you need to know exactly how a savings plan differs from a traditional reserved instance.
Wait, let me jump in here and push back a bit.
Sure.
I understand that AWS wants to emphasize cost, But it's like comparing different smartphone data plans. The underlying tech of the phone is great, but if the pricing structure changes from unlimited to pay per gigabyte, you need to know exactly how it hits your wallet.
That's a great way to look at it.
But pushing advanced accounting principles and highly specific purchasing commitments onto an entry-level tech certification, I mean, it feels a little like gatekeeping to me. Shouldn't a cloud practitioner just know how to spin up an EC2 instance without needing to act like a certified public accountant?
I hear you. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to realize that in 2025 and 2026, cloud sprawl is the #1 threat to enterprise IT.
Cloud sprawl, just like resources everywhere.
Yeah. Companies are wasting billions of dollars on over-provisioned, completely unoptimized cloud resources. For businesses, the cloud's value proposition is the technology intertwined with the economics.
So they can't be separated anymore.
Not at all.
Mhm.
If you build the most technically brilliant, scalable environment in the world, but it bankrupts your department because you didn't understand that you should have used a compute savings plan instead of on-demand pricing, your architecture is a failure.
Wow. Yeah, that's a harsh reality.
AWS knows this. Therefore, they test you on these new payment structures, because cost optimization is now everyone's job, from the developer all the way up to the CFO.
Okay, I see your point. That makes a lot of sense.
Ma.
So let's talk about the mechanism behind these pricing models so the listener knows exactly what to look for on the exam.
Let's do it.
What is the fundamental difference they need to grasp between, say, a reserved instance and a savings plan?
Well, think of a reserved instance like buying a highly specific gym membership.
Okay.
You're committing to a 1-year or 3-year contract specifically for the Tuesday night spin class. It's heavily discounted, but if you decide you suddenly want to start swimming instead of spinning, you are out of luck.
Because the discount only applies to that specific class.
Exactly. On AWS, that translates to committing to a specific instance type in a specific region.
Ah, I love that analogy. It makes it so clear. And a savings plan.
A savings plan is like committing to spend $50 a month at that same gym for the same time period. You get a massive discount across the board, and you can use that $50 on the spin class, the pool, the weight room, whatever you want.
Oh, wow. So much more adaptable.
Right. In AWS terms, you are committing to a consistent dollar amount of compute usage per hour rather than a specific server type. It gives businesses immense flexibility.
So the exam will give you like scenario-based questions asking which model provides the most flexibility while still reducing costs.
Spot on. And you have to know that the answer is a savings plan.
Got it. And we also need to look at the tools used to monitor those costs. The notes specifically mention a heavy emphasis on services like AWS Cost Anomaly Detection and AWS Billing Conductor.
Yes. Cost anomaly detection is crucial because it uses machine learning to automatically detect unusual spending patterns.
So you aren't just staring at spreadsheets manually.
Exactly. You don't have to manually check your bill every single day. The system learns your baseline, and it alerts you if, say, a developer accidentally leaves a massive database running over the entire weekend.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. And then AWS Billing Conductor is tested because it allows large organizations to customize their billing data to match their internal company structure.
So they can figure out who's spending what.
Yeah, essentially letting them create custom chargeback reports for different departments.
Okay, so you've optimized your budget using these new pricing tiers, and you are monitoring it all with anomaly detection. But companies aren't saving that money just to sit on it, right?
Oh, definitely not.
They are reallocating those savings to the most computationally expensive, transformative technology of the decade, which drives our conversation straight from pricing into the absolute most explosive area of the updated exam scope generative artificial intelligence and machine learning.
The influx of AI and ML services is undeniably the most high-profile shift in the 2025-2026 exam scope. It entirely reflects the reality of the broader tech industry.
Yeah, you literally can't escape it.
Right. AWS has rapidly integrated these capabilities, and they fully expect foundational practitioners to be able to distinguish between their core AI offerings.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the exam doesn't just ask, like, what is AI?
No, not at all.
It heavily tests your ability to distinguish between distinct AWS AI services, specifically Amazon Bedrock and Amazon SageMaker.
Very heavily tested.
But again, I have to ask, does adding these incredibly advanced AI concepts fundamentally change the difficulty level of what is supposed to be a foundational exam?
I get why you'd ask that.
Like, are they expecting an entry-level practitioner to know how to train a neural network from scratch?
Not at all. And that is a crucial distinction for you, the listener, to remember. The CLF CEO2 tests high-level comprehension and business value. It does not test deep, hands-on technical
Oh,
deployment.
thank goodness.
Right. You do not need to know the Python code required to train a machine learning model. What you do need to know is the business use case for Amazon Bedrock versus the use case for Amazon SageMaker.
Okay, let's break those two down then, because they are guaranteed to show up on the test. How should a learner differentiate them?
Let's look at the mechanism of how they work. Think of Amazon Bedrock like a universal translator in a sci-fi movie.
Okay.
Bedrock provides access to what we call foundational models. These are pre-trained, massive AI models from companies like Anthropic, Meta, and Amazon themselves.
So the models already exist.
Yes, you don't need to know the grammar of the underlying neural network. You just connect to the Bedrock API, send it a prompt, and it gives you an answer.
That sounds incredibly easy.
It is the easiest way to build generative AI applications because the heavy lifting of training the model is already done for you.
So Bedrock is for when a company wants to immediately start using generative AI to, say, summarize thousands of legal documents, and they just want to plug into an existing incredibly smart model.
Precisely. Now contrast that with Amazon SageMaker.
Right, SageMaker.
If Bedrock is the universal translator, SageMaker is like building an entire university linguistics department from scratch.
Wow, okay. That's a huge difference in scale.
It is. SageMaker is a comprehensive platform for data scientists and developers to actually build, train, and deploy their own custom machine learning models using their own proprietary data.
That makes perfect sense. So if an exam question describes a healthcare company that wants to build a highly proprietary custom algorithm from scratch to detect tumors in X-rays using their own historical patient data, the answer is SageMaker.
Yes, absolutely.
But if a retail company just wants to add a generative AI chatbot to their website to answer basic customer FAQs, the answer is Bedrock.
You nailed it. It is entirely about knowing which tool solves the specific business problem. And alongside those two, the 2025-2026 scope heavily features Amazon Q.
Ah, Amazon Q, the generative AI assistant specifically designed for the enterprise.
Yes. The exam tests your understanding that Amazon Q isn't just a generic chatbot like you might use on your phone.
Right.
It is securely integrated into a company's own data and their AWS environment. It can help developers write code, troubleshoot network errors, or help business analysts quickly query their company's internal databases.
And their proprietary data isn't used to train the public models, right?
Exactly, without their proprietary data ever being used to train the public baseline models. That security aspect is key.
It's incredible how quickly these tools have become mandatory knowledge. But here's the thing. You can't just keep adding massive new services like Bedrock, SageMaker, and Q to the exam without cleaning house.
No, you really can't.
AWS has to physically make room in the syllabus. You cannot introduce the future without clearing out the past. It's like cleaning out a messy garage.
I know that feeling.
You have to haul out the obsolete, dusty tools to make shelf space for the shiny new AI gadgets. And that connects our AI discussion directly into the final, often overlooked category of the 2025-2026 updates, the retired AWS services.
It is the ultimate balancing act. As the AWS platform evolves, older services become redundant, obsolete, or their functionalities are simply integrated directly into newer, more efficient offerings.
Makes sense.
The exam scope must reflect that reality, which is why AWS expects you to know what not to use anymore.
So, what does this all actually mean for the test taker? Should a learner actually spend their precious time studying the deprecated stuff? Like, if a service is retired, why is it even relevant to the exam?
This raises an important question about study strategy and the dangers of using outdated materials.
Right, because there's so much old info out there.
So much. You must pay attention to what has been retired, but not so you can memorize how those old services used to work. You track them strictly so you can mentally cross them off your list.
Like a process of elimination.
Exactly. The biggest trap for a learner in this window is picking up a study guide from a year or two ago, seeing a legacy service like AWS Code Commit or AWS Cloud9, and spending hours trying to understand them.
Which is agonizing because AWS officially announced they were deprecating Code Commit, Cloud9, and several other developer tools. But why? Why did they kill off their own code repository and cloud-based IDE?
Because of strategic reallocation. AWS realized that the industry standard for code repositories is GitHub or GitLab.
Oh, sure. Everyone uses those.
Right. Maintaining their own proprietary version, like Code Commit, didn't make strategic sense when they needed to redirect thousands of their own software engineers to build out tools like Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q.
Oh, I see.
They are ceding ground on standard developer tools to focus entirely on generative AI and advanced data services.
That context is so helpful. It isn't just random dilution, it's a strategic shift. They are consolidating. Another great example from the notes is AWS Cloud Search. It's essentially a ghost town now because its capabilities were largely superseded by Amazon OpenSearch service.
Exactly. And understanding that evolution is a massive advantage. Knowing what has been retired functions as a negative filter for you during the exam.
A negative filter, I like that.
Yeah. If you are stuck on a multiple choice question, and one of the options is AWS Cloud Search or AWS Code Commit, you can immediately eliminate them. It increases your odds of getting the right answer simply by knowing what AWS no longer values.
You have to aggressively protect your study time.
Absolutely, focusing only on the active relevant technologies.
It's like knowing which streets on a constantly changing map have been permanently closed. If you know a road is blocked off, you won't waste time trying to plot a route down it. You just bypass it entirely and focus on the new highways.
That is exactly right. Filtering out the noise is half the battle when preparing for an IT certification in a highly dynamic environment like this.
So if we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, we really have built a comprehensive three-pronged strategy for conquering the 2025-2026 CLF-CAO2 updates.
We have.
First, you absolutely must master the evolving economics, specifically understanding the mechanisms of savings plans versus reserved instances, and knowing tools like AWS cost anomaly detection.
Crucial.
Second, you have to understand the high-level business value of the new AI frontier, specifically the difference between utilizing foundational models with Amazon Bedrock versus building custom models from scratch with Amazon SageMaker.
And don't forget Amazon Q.
Yes, of course, Q for the enterprise. And third, you have to rigorously filter out the retired services like Code Commit and Cloud Search so you don't waste time studying tools that AWS has intentionally left behind.
It is a phenomenal framework that will absolutely set the listener up for success.
I think so too.
But as we look at how aggressively AWS is pushing into the future, particularly with this massive influx of AI and machine learning into the testing scope, I want to leave you with one final forward-looking thought to ponder.
Ooh, okay. Lay it on me.
We just talked about how Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q are changing the way businesses operate, right?
All right.
But as these generative AI tools become even more sophisticated, how long will it be before artificial intelligence isn't just a topic you were tested on, but the exact mechanism AWS uses to dynamically generate, adapt, and evaluate the exam itself in real time?
Wait, really? Like writing the questions as you go?
Yeah. Imagine a testing environment that dynamically adjusts the difficulty of the questions based on the exact neural pathways you were demonstrating during the test.
Oh, wow. Adaptive testing on absolute steroids. The exam becoming as dynamic and responsive as the cloud itself?
It's coming.
That is a wild, slightly terrifying thought to end on. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. You now have the perfect conceptual framework to tackle your AWS Cloud Practitioner prep. Put down those outdated study guides, focus on the business outcomes of these new services, and keep navigating that moving landscape. Good luck with your studying.